Hey everyone, welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, the YouTube links to Zoom, and it's there that you can go into the chat and get a link over to Mukana. Now, in Mukana is where our Q&A is, and in the Q&A, you can ask questions, and your questions drive the show. You are the producers of the show. This show is unique in the fact that it's one where those questions get voted up, and those voted up questions get longer discussion. So we will sit and go on and on and on if we have a short amount of questions. So it's up to you guys to add questions, and we will talk on them as long as you guys vote on them. So we have decades of experience on this panel. There's people on here that have streamed stuff in India for big political figures. We have people in Europe. We have people across the globe. Carl in Australia. We have lots of people with experience. So ask those questions. We'll get in front of these panelists. If you'd like to be on the panel, show up at 6:40 in the morning, have good audio, good video. You can come in as early as 5 a.m. That's Pacific Coast time, and you can check your stuff. And we're just kind of meandering around at 5 in the morning, still waking up. And then by 6, the webinar starts, and you can still do mic checks in there if you'd like. Today, we're going to have Q&A for the first hour in about 45 minutes. Usually, the second hour is a special guest. Not today. We don't have a special guest or special topic, so we will just continue on with Q&A. And 9 a.m. Will be hosted by, that will be the education hour, and that will be hosted by Emily Russo. She'll be coming in, and as well as the rest of our educators. So today, TJ will be asking the questions. Jesse will be cutting the show. Let's go ahead and get started with the first question, TJ. Not hearing you, TJ.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Well, helps to turn on my microphone. So the first question today is from Paul Vahus from Austin, Texas, who asks, the scroll wheel on a mouse attached to a Mac works opposite to the scroll wheel on a PC. Is there any way to reverse this?
Yeah, go ahead, Carl.
So the best thing you can do is simply go to System Preferences. You want to click on the mouse. Once you're in there, you'll see the top one. Click on that. So you just want to make that tick opposite to what you currently have. If what you currently have is what you don't want, then tick it or untick it, depending on what you currently want.
All right, next question.
Next question is from Mark Giuliani from Alexandria, Virginia, who says, has anyone had any issues with the latest version of Zoom? Any reason to skip this version?
All right, John Preto.
What's the latest version? Is it 5.7? 5.7. I've been running it since it first came out. I'm on a Mac. I haven't had any issues at all.
Anyone want to add on that? Rupert, have you had a chance to play with it?
I am on the latest version. I checked this morning, and everything seems okay.
Leo, you want to add on that?
I've had a weird one, and it's only been today. When I jump between rooms, between breakouts and back, my camera sometimes disappears. Don't know if it's 5.7. I've never seen this before, but my camera just seems to disappear occasionally. So, don't know.
TJ Asher.
So we've seen that Leo, does your camera kind of go gray on you? Your video go gray on you? Or does the camera disappear from...
The camera's there. It says Blackmagic, either 25 or 50p, and it just literally will not. It just doesn't pick it up. I've never seen it do it before.
We've seen that happen on occasion with folks who have an ATEM. Sometimes it's happened to me on occasion where it'll just randomly decide to, when I switch from one instance to another, just not pick up again.
Nigel?
Yeah, I don't know whether it's worth anything, but I had exactly what Leo had this morning. I assumed it was my incompetence with my technology, but I've experienced that 2 days in a row, and I just assumed it was a new camera and I was messed up, so maybe it wasn't.
And what you said, Nigel, it's only been since I've been on 5.7. I've seen this.
Yeah, me too.
JJ.
Yeah, due to that, actually, we in some of the productions we've been working on lately, that's exactly the issue, in that as soon as we turn on the webcam control program, in the new 5 version that's out of Zoom, it'll immediately turn the camera black. So all the camera settings go completely black, and then we have to fiddle with those settings in order to get the person on the other side visible again.
That's interesting because yesterday I had a job interview. I interview people all the time, and this lady came in, and imagine her chagrin when her camera came in black, and we spent about 20 minutes before I finally called it and said, no interview, we're going to have to reschedule for Monday. That's what an awful way to start off for somebody on 5.7 if that's truly what happened. Rosco, you want to expand on that?
Well, just is this one brand or is this a variety of brands that we identified?
Leo?
Sorry, I was going to come back to me on that because I've got a follow up afterwards.
JJ?
Ours was Logitech Brio.
All right, the next question still falls in line with this, so let's go ahead and jump on that one, TJ.
The next question is from Rosco Jones, and here on the panel, who says, what is new in Zoom 5.7.0? Would someone go over the latest ways to cut a Zoom show, both for a meeting and for a webinar? Thank you.
Leo?
So just following on the last one, sorry to do this, but they've already released that there's going to be a new release out. Looks like it's going to come out on Monday. So they're putting out a patch release on Monday for fixes. So that seems to equate to the fact that something's not quite tweaked on this version, which may be why we're getting the black cameras. What's new on 5.7? Some of the features, they've got a new ability for you to upload custom templates. You have to be in as an admin. If you're into your account as an account administrator, you can actually put equivalents of lower thirds now onto your own account, so it will appear on your screen and back. So it's effectively you can put a layer over the top of your screen. But you can't do it in your user. You have to do it in the administrator of the thing. Carl has put in a link for the whole of the SDK. I'll leave Carl to explain where he's put it. The other things is they've put in support for pronouns, but I haven't been able to make it work.
So
nice. And then
if you,
Jesse,
as far as
go.
I was just going to say where that link was, just quickly. So if you go into Discord, video conferencing, Zoom, that's where the link is.
Nice. And then Jesse, did you want to explain a little bit on how you're cutting the show?
Sure. So the way I'm doing it is I use the little upper right corner where it says view, and then under my view, there's a choice of attendee view to follow host view. So being the host, the way I go from a close-up, I select my view as speaker. If I want the overall group, I go to gallery. So it's really just those two buttons that I'm cutting the show with. Every once in a while, we'll use spotlighting, where I need to, from the participant panel, select the person that I want to spotlight, then right-click on them, and then have everyone follow that spotlight. And that works pretty nicely when you want to look at somebody's screen, but they're not necessarily talking the whole time. For instance, when we do ruthless reviews for video, the person may not be talking, but you want his box to stay as the close-up. So that's when we use Spotlight. But it's really just those items that we use to cut the show. It sounds simple. It kind of is simple, but there's still a lot of work to do to get it to run smoothly.
And Chad Lafarge?
And one of the things that we talked about this morning is that we could probably simplify that workflow by either assigning just the spotlight responsibilities to a co-host, or by coming in on a second account, promoting that to co-host and using that to spotlight. And I think that distributes the work in a way that might be distracting.
That's interesting that you say that, Chad, because I was going to say that yesterday. I've done it once on Mickey, and he was kind of shocked that I spotlighted something because he got confused. But I think as long as the cutter was aware of what was going on, that it would be super helpful, because you can't always rapid fire. So Jesse, when you do it, are you going on the spotlight from the participants, or are you right clicking on the gallery view image?
So I'm going from the participants because I don't see the full gallery when I'm hosting the show. So I do use the participants. So this morning, Chad said that he would handle the spotlight for me. So now I'm expecting it. So I think, like with the Mickey incident, if Mickey just knew somebody might do that ahead of time, that would have worked. I think it's worth cutting some shows both ways to see how it works better. Like the way we're doing it today with Chad doing spotlight, and then maybe tomorrow I'll try and do both and see as a cutter if it's less stressful if Chad's doing the spotlight. I do like the idea of a second person, a co-host like Chad, handling spotlight, because to try and monitor the gallery all the time while you're cutting is a lot of work.
Yeah, Leo?
Yeah, I think that you've hit a lot of really important points there, Jesse. The thing is also to say is even though if you do have that person doing the secondary spotlighting, it's still going to be the host's view that gets out. And what is the risk is that the host will flip into gallery mode if they don't realize it, and then they've lost the view that the world is seeing. And it's particularly what also happens is when you do spotlight, it throws anybody who's in gallery mode off gallery mode into whatever the other view's called. Sorry, I can't think what it's called. Into speaker view, and it causes problems. This is a really hard show to cut because the people cutting it are also on the show. Typically, when I cut shows, I'm not on the show as well, which means that I can do it and talk. I normally have two people cutting, and we sit behind talking to each other on Discord to keep ourselves in track. But I don't think you could do that and be on this. Be present.
So this one's interesting because we're doing a screen scrape, I believe, today, Jeffrey. So if we do a multi-spotlight, that should go out to YouTube clean. Can we do a multi-spotlight where you pick two people, and can the people in Mukana tell us how that's looking, if it's coming across as active speaker looks clear and the secondary person next to them is not looking so clear? And then when they become active speaker, like Jeffrey, go ahead and talk if you're spotlighted. Or do we have two up yet?
There's only one spotlight.
Add one more spotlight.
Yeah.
There we go. We got JJ.
Yeah, no,
so now JJ talk. You got to unmute.
That's a lovely looking shirt there today, Jeffrey. It almost matches the brick in the background.
It's not happening. The double pin doesn't work this way.
Double pin doesn't work. Okay, cool. All right. Well, let's go ahead and move along, and let's go ahead and grab the next question if you're ready, JJ.
I am. The next question is from Alex 4D Golner in London, who says, Microsoft has confirmed that Windows 11 will refuse to install on 7th gen or older CPUs, including their own computers released in 2017. Bad news or good news?
John Pewitt.
I think it's just news. It's bad news if you have a computer of that generation and you want to upgrade to Windows 11. But if you don't have one with that processor in it, then you're largely unaffected. Windows 11, more or less from what I'm hearing, is a new UI and a few new features on Windows 10, and Windows 10 is still going to be supported for quite some time. So, and in production, it's usually not a good idea to upgrade immediately anyway. So overall, I think it's not going to be a huge deal unless you're like myself and want to upgrade right away. But I'm weird for this panel.
TJ, then Rupert.
I think this is actually good news. Microsoft has been hampered for years by just keeping the old legacy stuff just dragging along and dragging along and dragging along. And where Apple has always had the ability to just, nope, we don't care. We're just going to cut it off and, dump everything that's older than we want to deal with. Windows 11 will only run on a 64-bit processor, which I think is a really good idea. It's time for Microsoft to start, cutting the legacy stuff away, and I think this is really good news.
So the problem with doing that is they have such a wide installed base that cutting out some of those segments really hurts some of their big customers. So they sometimes hesitant about doing that. But from what I remember during the release of Windows 10 is the hardware compatibility actually got kind of expanded over time. They did one sweep and got all the common configurations out, and then they squeezed a few more out, and it became more and more compatible over time for Windows 10.
Nigel?
Yeah, I guess it's sort of tangential slightly, which is I wonder whether there's anybody who moves backwards and forwards between Windows and Mac for different reasons, or whether we've all sort of established we have Windows for some jobs and Macs for others. And this opportunity may be more interesting for Apple, because if you've got to change your computer, that might be the time to change your operating system for some.
John Pewitt, did you want to add on to that?
I was just indicating I use both Mac and Windows and interchangeably. Just whatever suits me at the moment.
Nice. Next question, TJ.
Next is from Tim Holm in San Lorenzo. What is your next piece of equipment that is on your list to enhance your personal setup? Or Have you arrived already?
Go ahead, Rupert.
Well, I think it's always ongoing for everybody, but I have a couple of different lists going at different levels of budget. The thing I'm quite excited about coming in the mail is a quick release quarter 20 adapter, which I'm really curious to see how well that's going to work, and it's going to make detaching a couple pieces of equipment here just real easy. But then also on the bigger side of things, the 6K Pro.
All right, Jesse, then Nigel, then John.
Yeah, I used to think I needed a MixPre too, but now that I've got my microphone further away from the computers, I don't really need it. And I've learned I need to be really careful about what I say I wish I had, because my dad watches the show in the background. And then he calls me up. He's like, so Jesse, you need that MixPre too? I'm like, that's okay, Dad.
That's awesome. Nigel?
I just did the 6K, so I've probably ended my spending regime for the next few months. But I think that my investments will be less in hardware and more in software. So I think the move to me is now to start sorting out some of that side of stuff.
Yeah, John, then Ken.
My ATEM Mini is hitting some walls for what I want to do with it, and so I'm looking at my next hardware investment being an ATEM Mini Extreme ISO. But that'll probably be 3 or 4 months out, maybe half a year out before I can buy it, because $1,200 is not an easy spend.
Leo.
What I was going to say to John on that comment, John, is I'm worried you won't be able to get an ATEM Mini ISO Extreme in 6 months' time. The chips on those, they did a teardown on it, and the chip alone is on a 1 year back order for the chip on that ISO, and it's that for if you want to just go and buy one. So it could be you can't get them.
Well, my need is a little more pedestrian. I'm actually looking in the hardware line for a bigger desk. I can only stack so much stuff on this thing, and it's beginning to get a little wobbly.
Yeah, I'm feeling the same way. I'm in a confined space here, and yeah, a new desk would be nice. Next question.
Next up is John Prudhoe from Las Vegas, who says, NDI 5 is supposed to be out by the end of the month. I know they had a webinar this week. Does anybody know when they are going to release?
Doesn't look like anybody.
Crickets.
Yeah, crickets. Where's Courtney with some cricket sound effects? We could go for that one right about now. I did watch a webinar by Keycode Meet. I did watch a webinar by Keycode on NDI 5. There might be something in there, as Dr. Andrew Cross, who is the founder of Newtek and of NDI, discussed. I believe there was a roadmap in there, but I didn't watch the whole thing, so you might want to tune in for that. I'll see if I can put a link in the chat to that one. Next question.
Next up is Fred Eric Eckert from Bad Herrenalb, Germany, who says, what is your workflow to get your skin tone right in your setup?
Go ahead, Carl.
So buy a Canon camera and then set your picture profile to standard. That's it. So that's why the Canon color science. Sony's probably the worst. It's going to come out orange. Blackmagic is halfway between Canon and Sony. They're better than Sony, but not as good as Canon. Unfortunately, some sensors are just not tuned into skin tone. So this is why Canon gets props, what they call their color science. A LUT is best. So we do have people on the panel would know that Charles has a good LUT for the Blackmagic cameras for skin tone. So that is one thing. So we do know that. So Charles has obviously done that. He's actually looked at what's coming out of the camera, and then he's adjusted it slightly to make the skin tones look good. But Canon cameras can do it out of the box. Sony cameras, a lot more work, and Blackmagic's somewhere in the middle.
Jesse, then Rupert, and then Ross.
Yeah, so one thing, if you want to try and get your color accurately done, and you work with somebody like Charles who creates custom LUTs, you can get a chart. This is what Charles asked me to get. He actually asked me to get a much more expensive version of this, and I bought $50 for this, was about what I was willing to spend. But if you have something that is color accurate, then the person can do what they do to make sure that you're getting accurate color. If your camera will accept a LUT. I'm using a Sony. It doesn't accept LUTs. I would disagree with Carl. I think color balance and the look is very subjective. While what he's saying, I'm sure, is right technically, my eye prefers the Sony cameras, not just my Sony camera, but on a lot of other people's Sony color. So it's very much a preferential thing. I actually don't like what Blackmagic does out of the box. I know you can put a LUT in, and Charles's LUT looks amazing, but I've struggled, and the Sonys have a bluer tinge to them, which for my, like if you tend to blush, that kind of thing, having a cooler color temperature is useful. And I noticed a lot of people, when we've had on the show, some of the influencers or the anchors that have large followers, they're all using Sonys. So I think there is something to be said about what Sony's doing with their color science.
Go ahead, Rupert.
So I would just say try to use lighting, good quality lights with a high CRI. That means that they'll be the most color accurate and give you the best chance of being able to match it in. Also, remember to really monitor the output of where your signal is going. If you're using Zoom and that's where you want to look good, set up a meeting, come in on another machine and look at yourself there, because Zoom's going to do some stuff on the way, and you may not always end up looking exactly like you do at your end, at the far end.
Rosco?
Yeah, the classic way on a vector scope, and I know that we have a waveform in here, but a vector scope actually has a line on it running northwest, actually a little more northwest, that is actually the flesh tone line. And so if you have access to a vector scope, you just want to make sure that your flesh tones are on that line. Oh, he's switching it over for us as we speak. I don't know what my flesh tones, if I'm the speaker, will be. And then, as far as practical things, I'm actually on a Brio, so I have saturation, I can play with, and I certainly have my color temperature that I can change, and that would be changing my flesh tone. So that's the practical tool is webcam settings. Because of a Brio camera, there are certainly ATEM settings for a pocket camera, and but the classical way is get the vector scope and hit that line.
All righty, next question.
Next up is JJ McKenna from Santa Venetia, California. And on the panel here today, given that the MixPre accepts both Bluetooth connectivity, is there some way to push additional control to the MixPre, such as modifying levels or switching the device to file transfer mode?
Where's Mickey when you need him? JJ, you want to expand on how you're using the MixPre and why you're asking this one?
Actually, for the kits. So I'm asking because very often a kit will be in a remote location, and after record, the MixPre has a file transfer mode, but it's all done on the modification is done on the little touchpad to switch it up. And if one could switch that MixPre remotely, just send a command saying, okay, put it into file transfer mode, and then take that file, put it in the computer, transfer it directly to Dropbox, then and there, versus waiting for a device to come in-house. That'd be nice. And I know that occasionally Mr. Toulis shows up here. I haven't seen him in Discord, so I was hoping that someone might know how to either modify those commands or push commands to it to make that change.
Beju, then.
So I'm not sure, but like there is the MixPre does support MIDI over USB. I'm not sure what command toolset is available over the MIDI. Does it allow changing modes or not? So that's something that might be worth checking out in the manual. Then you could always build a USB to MIDI bridge using the network, using a box or a third-party device. That could be an option to do it if you can't do it over Bluetooth.
And Ken?
Well, the definitive answer from Mickey in the chat is no, you can't do it. So I think that answers that question.
All righty. Thanks, Mickey. Next question.
And next up from Leo Mindell from Pinner, UK, and also on the panel here today. I am doing a fixed install at a location. I am sending the same signal to a number of large TVs using SDI. At the remote end, I am using the Blackmagic device's microconverters back to HDMI. Is there any problems powering them off or off the USB sockets on the TV?
Go ahead, Carl.
So technically, yes, you could do it. The consumption is quite low. It's only 320 milliamps. Most USB sockets will give out 500 minimum. Most TVs probably give out one amp to run something like a most drives. So most drives will actually take that. So yes, the only problem is some TVs will, if they don't see any data transfer on that particular USB, they'll just go into low power mode after 5 minutes. So when you plug something in, it will go, okay, I'll turn on for 5 minutes. If there's no data transfer on that USB, it will go, okay, I'm going to switch it off. So that may be a problem. So you'll have to test it, and you have to test it for a while because it may work for 5-10 minutes and then it will go into a low power mode and maybe switch off power on that USB. So I'd suggest just testing it for like a couple of hours and see if that picture stays up there. Because yeah, it doesn't require much power to run it, that's true. But it's more about the TV switching off that power from the USB if it doesn't see a signal coming in on the USB channel.
Go ahead, Rupert.
So if the TV happens to have more than one port, you can get those little Y cables that will combine the power from 2 ports and deliver it to your device. So it may not be an ideal solution, but if you needed to work around, that might help you. Also, if the TV has a detachable power cord and that is the only power supply you have got there, you can get these little T adapters that will insert in that plug and then give you a T piece off there and give you another outlet. So you could run a regular power brick off that.
Nice. Next question.
From Bill McIntosh in Long Island, the Techrise USB sound card, and a link to that, no longer supports TS mono input and does not work with the inexpensive Pyle or Polsen mics. Any ideas how to use it? Maybe TS to TRS adapter, and TS is tip sleeve and TRS is tip ring sleeve.
Rosco Jones.
Yeah, there's a couple of solutions. You can partially insert it. That's not a good solution because it'll move and then it'll never work again. But I'm going to blank on his name, but we actually had someone come in and show us how you could open up the new Techrises. The old Techrises work perfectly. The ones that have the ribbed edges on them, they do not work perfectly. So you can open them up and yank the middle connector. I actually have a picture and showing that on Discord. It's under the golden list if you want to look for the actual details. But yes, you can fix them. But yeah.
Next question.
From Rupert McCrae in Dallas, Texas, and also on the panel with us today. Do you encourage Logitech Brio users to check for firmware updates on a regular basis? And has anyone ever seen any real-world improvements after an upgrade?
Rupert, this seems very specific. Is there a use case you would expand on what's going on there?
Well, I was just doing some general housekeeping and ran the Logitech firmware updater tool here last couple of weeks, and sure enough, it said there was a update. Now it was like 2.6, I think, something like that. Now the tool itself gave me a list of the release notes. There was some minor fixes in this case, I think something to do with maybe exposure, but that was the only place I can find like the release notes for what these firmware updates actually do. I've searched like online, the Logitech website, to look at what maybe the previous updates have improved. But the only way I seem to be able to see that information is in the tool if you have an update available. So I was just wondering what other people's experiences were. But that might help the problem that was discussed earlier with the camera freezing when you want web camera control through Zoom, maybe.
John Pyle.
So I'm coming at this from a security perspective as opposed to another perspective. And thinking about it logically, the Logitech cam isn't typically controlled remotely. Now, it can be, and if it is in that case, I would consider upgrading the firmware. But if you're not, and you're not having any issues, I would delay the firmware update unless you have a need for it. If you are having the camera blackout issues and you want to see if that would fix it, that would be a good experiment. But otherwise, you don't necessarily need to upgrade.
Back to you.
I guess you just may not know, because if one of those updates happen to include something about white balance or something, it just may improve your picture, for example. You may not have realized it wasn't as good as it could be, and they've done something to improve it, maybe.
Alrighty, next question.
Coming in from Chris Widener from Lafayette, Indiana. Does anyone have a recommendation for a quad HDMI output for a MacBook Pro for use with the ZoomISO?
Go ahead, Carl.
So I'm not going to put a picture up because I'm not too sure if it's going to work, but 5J Create do make a USB-C Thunderbolt to 4 HDMI adapter box. So J5 Create, and just put in 4 HDMI and you'll find it come up. But I'm not going to recommend it over because I haven't tried it myself. So personally, I don't know if it's going to work with the Mac.
Go ahead, TJ.
I know Alex has been playing around with the device from Monoprice that it's an eight mixer thing, not necessarily a 4. That might be a bit overkill, but there might be something that Monoprice offers that might go along with that type of thing.
Go ahead, Beiju.
So I don't have a suggestion for a quad device in total, but there are a couple of good adapters from CalDigit and OWC, which basically give you two full 4K displays over Thunderbolt, either DP or HDMI. So you could use a couple of them on two different Thunderbolt buses on the MacBook, and you should hopefully be able to get 4 displays out. Depends on if the MacBook is able to support more. If it's HD, it should be able to do 4 outputs that way, I think.
Alrighty, and Carl, we do love the pictures, so keep them up. Next question, TJ.
That comes from Jeff Keithley from Texas. All this talk of using Zoom to cut a show, why not just use a tool designed to cut video? Right tool for the right job.
Crickets. Where's our cricket sound effect? Jeff, that's awesome. Yeah. There we go. Looks like we got a couple hands up now. Jesse, then Leo, then.
I think one of the reasons we use Zoom to cut the show is that we try and permit people to remotely do it. And let me try and switch to different view here. It's hard to cut and participate. But so in the ease of having people from all over the world be able to collaborate and cut our show, it's nice to have the controls be just built into Zoom. That's really the easiest way to hand off the controls.
Is that Leo next?
I just unmuted and it muted itself. The double push of the button on there. Yeah, I was hands off. The bit that Jesse's saying, taking it forward. I mean, I use a lot of different products. I use vMix for certain things. I use Wirecast. There is the remote contribution in Zoom. There's only 2 that I really can use that I would say are up for it. One is Zoom. The other one is using StreamYard. Sorry, it's one of those days. StreamYard, and they work because you can get people in remotely. And you can get people in and get the show going. But the cutting, I'd say, is a deficit. This is not designed for production. This is designed for meetings, and we're just using it as a CDN and then using its technology. So that's where the deficit is.
Yeah, I'd love to see Jeff raise his digital hand and pop in and tell us how to do it. Rosco, go ahead.
Budget. I mean, teachers don't have money to go out and buy some sort of, 4 input switcher cutter thingamajig or figure out how to use it. It works. If we can give them some techniques on how to make their classes and webinars look better by having a assistant student cut the show, wonderful. I love having those little tips and talents that help them do it better, and that's really what the magic, I think, sometimes of office hours is.
Yeah, Rupert, did you want to add on to that?
No, I'll pass on that. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have this big dream of putting it up in the cloud and allowing other people, whether it be through one of Jeff's suggestions like Sienna or Unite or one of these other vMix in the cloud, live stream studio, where we have all the independent feeds coming in and then somebody else can cut it. And maybe they can kick it over to somewhere private where they can stream it so they get the feel of what it's like to take in a graphic, to do a 2-up, 3-up, roll in a playback and a logo or a PowerPoint, because by doing it all the time, you get used to it and you get comfortable, and this shows every day. So you do get better and better every day, and you figure out where the pitfalls are. Go ahead now, Rupert.
Well, something just to come to mind, I guess we're still curious maybe to see if they add any functionality to support this in Zoom events, that's more kind of in that realm. So we'll just have to see on that one.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with Zoom events as more people come back in the next, let's say, all the way up to October. If we get a lot of people who go, I kind of like that Zoom thing. We went and we traveled, we flew, we put up a big booth, and yeah, let's just do that Zoom thing. So we'll see if it gets better and better. All right, next question.
From Hasmukh Gajar in Cape Town. During mic checks, Rosco had a gate issue with his audio chain. Explain the concept of gate.
Rosco.
Well, we just had cows running loose in the street here in Los Angeles, which was cool. The gate is meant to keep something in. In this case, the gate is to not allow noise into my pathway. So there's a setting on many audio devices that allows you to clamp at a certain level the noise. So if I stop talking, my signal should have gone perfectly silent because the gate closed and kept my fan, which is on the backside of the room, from entering into and contaminating my signal path.
Rupert, then TJ.
Guess another, we've had all kinds of analogies for this, here from time to time, but maybe just another way to think of it is like a dam. And, you have to get the signal to a certain level before it'll actually go over. So the water held back is kind of your noise and your background noise. And then when you get up to a certain level, there comes your signal.
TJ?
Somebody here had mentioned like a gate in a fence that had a spring on it, that a big dog with a lot of power could get through that gate, but a little dog with not a lot of power could not get through that gate. And that really helped kind of cement it in my mind.
Jeffrey?
Like the MixPre with the noise cancellation, anything that's noise cancellation usually has some sort of gating option in there. So it's a very loose term, but it's still the same thing.
Yeah, noise assist and Cedar are a lot more sophisticated than just a typical gate. I mean, there's a lot going on there. That's why they cost, $300 for the noise assist, and then what Cedar was like $3,000 as an independent box. So there's some special tech going on there. Next question.
From Hajma Gajar in Cape Town. During my medical event yesterday, twice the video would not go on from the ATEM Extreme ISO. Had to unplug and power up again. Anyone had this? Thankfully, no such experience.
Carl, then Rupert.
Yeah, so for me, it shows up as a dark gray screen in Zoom. So not black, but just dark gray. And that's how I know. The second I see that dark gray screen come up instead of my picture, I know it's because it's coming out, the signal's coming out. I just quickly repower cycle the ATEM Mini. It works every time.
I would just check if you've got anything else on your machine that might be trying to talk to the camera, like WebEx or Teams or any of those things that also try to latch onto the camera. Doesn't sound like in this case it's maybe an electrical issue, but I have had things do weird things when other electrical things happen. I've got a monitor here, for example. I've got 3 monitors here. One happens to go through an HDMI splitter, and when I turn my monitoring amplifier on, that monitor cuts out for a second. So I know I've got some kind of ground loop, some grounding problem, some transient thing that I've got to try and troubleshoot. So that may be not the case in this case, but equipment can do odd things.
Rosco Jones.
Yeah, and we've had to pull both the power and the USB that's connecting it to the device that's how you're transferring the signal. So don't just pull just power, you have to pull both in order to get it to cycle.
Yeah, I know Hasmic's been working hard on this event. So this is, again, why doing events more often, testing is super helpful so that when you do have the big one, it goes super smooth. And I've seen this happen with 1080p Zoom where it pulls it on that initial connection and then does something to the black magic. Ken?
Of course, the key to getting anything fixed is to be able to duplicate the problem. So if you can identify when I do this, then this happens. And every time I do this, that happens. That's something that somebody else can fix. The joke is you can't fix it if it won't stay broken.
Love it.
Just in terms of testing and practicing, if you are going to test, it's not just the workflow, but you want to use the same equipment that you're going to be using on the event and try and stick with that. Have backups, but try and keep your production matching what you've tested with.
Great. Next question.
Next up from Tim Holm in San Lorenzo about the headphone out on the Blackmagic ATEM Mini Extremes. Are you using yours? What is the benefit?
Carl.
So realistically, what it's good for is no latency or extremely low latency, because you've got to remember the ATEM Mini and the Mini Extreme have very powerful digital mixers in them. So if you're bringing audio in via cameras or through a line input, try not to use the mic inputs, but a line input via the mic inputs, it's for mixing. Because if you're trying to mix program on your computer, like you're sending it out USB to your computer and then trying to listen to your computer, it's going to be delayed. So it gives you real-time monitoring of the audio mixing capabilities, which is pretty powerful in both those machines.
Alrighty, next question.
Next up from Hasmukh Gajar in Cape Town. I have the Sennheiser 416 mic. I also have the SM58. On the show the other day, there was talk of mics that are more resilient in picking up room and surround sound. I am ambivalent on getting the HEIL PR40. Very tempted after watching TJ's new rotating stand. And I just have to say, this is the OC White underslung stand, and it is really, really nice. It's stupid expensive, but so nice.
Oh, come on, TJ, raise it up so we can see it a little more. Oh, how much? Come on, what's ridiculous expensive? Are we talking a whole Alex, half an Alex?
A half an Alex. It's $300. I got it for just under $300 at B&H.
Nice. Jeffrey, and then...
Just really quick, I have an underslung stand as well, and it's actually a lot cheaper that you can find. So if you can't do the Alex price, we've got another version.
John Preto, and then Rosco.
TJ, how far from your mouth is the mounting point on the desk from that? I was getting ready to buy it, but I was worried about the length.
This one is not quite, it's about 2 feet, maybe just over 2 feet. So
on the audio experts panel, the use of a 416 in a room was not recommended just because the reflections that it needs to do the rejection forward doesn't work in a smaller space. So I would go with the SM. He's kind of asking about room and rejecting room sound, so I would go with the SM58.
Yeah, I've played a lot with that 416. If you get right up on it in a room and you throw up some blankets or something, you can. It's very usable. A 416 was even voted as one of the top VO mics at one point in time. That was years ago. But and some films were actually or one of the biggest VO guys in town. He used the 416. TJ again.
Mickey, excuse me, Mickey always says that he doesn't like to use a shotgun mic inside spaces. He only tries to use those outside. So I guess in that case, the SM58 would be the better choice.
Yep. Beiju.
So I think one of the issues that often comes up is like the SM58, you need to get it in really close. Same with the HEIL. So if there's no issue with having the mic in frame, those are great. Otherwise, other alternatives are using something like the DPA or the Countryman, but they have their own issues as well. So it's often a balancing act. So like if you can't mic that person in close, can't bring the mic in close, then you might need to do a lot of sound baffling with blankets and etc. and balance it out if you can. But yeah, the SM58 probably is a lot easier, and it's also easier for talent as well because it's familiar. Most people have seen it. They know how to use it. You can bring it in close and they can probably just pick it up and start using it without worrying too much compared to some more complex other mics like the HEIL.
All righty, TJ, next question.
Next up from Paul Valhus from Austin, Texas. Instagram just started running as a browser app. What is the role of Instagram as a destination for office hours, and how do the various destinations, YouTube, Facebook, etc., rank?
Ooh, anybody Instagram experts? Beiju's nodding his head. Leo, go for it.
Well, I'm going to give the negative problems that you're going to deal with first of all. Instagram is a 4x3 delivery. So at the moment, everything in office hours is 16:9. So you're going to have problems with the delivery from my experience of everything on there, any production to it. And at the moment, to my knowledge, it's still against the terms of service to deliver to Instagram outside of the app, unless they've changed that as well.
Jeffrey Powers.
Yeah, that's exactly true. Plus, I the web page was always a place that you go to upload videos for the longer form stuff rather than through your phone. And I'm guessing that the browser app is just going to be that further extension, so you can get a little bit more analytics and a little bit more upload opportunities with different features on it. But definitely will probably not allow you to go within or outside the infrastructure otherwise. But it could also be a place for live in, but we'll see.
Looks like we got another one in from Paul. Paul, TJ, you want to take that one?
Yep. Next one from Paul says, what is a simple basic phone patch for the ATEM Mini Pro? ATEM Extreme ISO. Simple and basic, yet effective.
Yeah, TJ, you want to go and grab that?
So if we're talking getting an HDMI signal into the ATEM, the from an iPhone, the Apple adapter, the media HDMI adapter works flawlessly every time. We have tried other various cables and whatnot. This is the only one that has worked every single time. But I don't know what you would do for Android.
Yeah, I should have been more specific. I intended to say from a landline phone, from a, standard landline phone with a, RJ11 jack.
Yeah, Beiju.
Paul, have a look at JK Audio. They have a ton of different adapters for this, and they're built for this. So you have them for landline, you have them for Bluetooth to connect to a cell phone, and you can get multiple ways to get audio out of that. Then you just need to convert that analog audio either through an adapter or a balanced to unbalanced converter to bring into your ATEM.
Yeah, go ahead, Rupert.
I don't have it to hand, but I do have a handset to mic and earphone Y cable, kind of like what you might put into a smartphone, except the end goes into the handset adapter or the headset adapter if your phone has one connector, and I've used that relatively successfully.
Nice. Yeah, Paul, if you jump over to markertech.com and type in the JK Audio, like Beiju was saying, there's quite a few in there, like you were saying. For years, we've used these. Ken?
What, MarkerTech? Is that what you said, Guy?
Yeah, if somebody could put a link in the chat, markertech.com.
I'll look for your link. Thank you.
Yeah, Paul, I
Ken
think if you
Jones?
look in your closet, you'll find something there. It's got HEIL Kit written on the front of it.
More likely, I'll find it in my cargo container.
Nice. All right, next question.
Comes from Chris in Toronto. Zoom can do independent audio recordings. Is there any way to get independent video recordings?
Leo? Beiju? Go for it, Beiju.
Yeah, so as of right now, as far as I'm aware, the only way you can get the Zoom recordings are for the speaker view and the gallery view. You can get those separately, but you can't get all the independent speakers as of right now that I'm aware of. Could be wrong on that. The other way, which a lot of people are doing right now, is basically logging into the Zoom meeting and recording ISOs of individual viewers, individual speakers on separate machines locally.
Leo?
Yeah, so Beiju's covered most of it. I mean, that's what the whole objective of Andy's Zoom ISO is to try and get to. And the way I would see it working long term is to be able to use it in the cloud so that you can actually record them in the cloud. But I can't see it natively in Zoom at the moment.
Jeffrey and then Rupert.
I was going to say, if anybody does know that answer, they're most likely under NDA and won't be able to talk about it at this point in time.
Well, what I will say is that that is something you can do with Skype through NDI outputs. You get an ISO'd NDI output for every participant. And as far as I know, if you can access the back end for Teams, you can do the same thing. So I just wonder how close Zoom on their roadmap want to get to that same level of functionality.
Beiju, then back to Leo.
So one thing with Teams that I think as far as it is that once you go beyond a certain number of NTI streams, it reduces the bandwidth available to it. So you can't get full quality on all of them. So that's one of the challenges that going with that. And I think it's similar with Skype as well, that after a point, it just starts stepping it down.
Leo.
So there was a related element in the release notes that came out with 5.7 that said that participants are notified when the stream going through an NDI device begins. This is the first time that Zoom have actually mentioned the word NDI that we can actually find. It doesn't actually mean anything. It's doing anything because we can't find anything that's got an NDI device yet. But we do know, and it's been talked about from many people, including Sam from Zoom, talks about it publicly on the AV Tech Talks and other places, that there is an NDI version of Zoom coming soon.
And Beiju.
Yeah, so from talking to a few people, what seems to be is that it's a NDI version is coming to Zoom Rooms first. So you should be able to get, I think, probably up to 3 NDI outputs out of that. So that's what the reason is for. It's basically just giving a notification of that itself. Doesn't seem to be coming to the main client as of yet. But that's where thing like Zoom and Zoom ISO would probably help, because that seems to add a lot of the capabilities, especially for production for people like us.
Alrighty, Leo.
And just to follow up, Jeff Keithy has said it's coming to Zoom Rooms first, and he's right. Actually, also it was mentioned on the Zoom Kitchen before it was on AV Tech Talk. So shout out to Jeff as he runs that.
Yeah, there was another release note that was publicly made. If somebody could paste that in Mukana, something about NDI production, something, if it was this morning, if somebody wants to pull it up, there was some public stuff. And then let's grab the next question.
Which comes from Leo Mindell and Pinner UK. Suggestions on how to mount Blackmagic devices microconverters on the back of a TV or TV bracket.
Carl, then Rupert, then Ken.
So coincidentally, all the Blackmagic, the mini and the micro converters are all just under 1 inch deep at their narrowest, which means you're going to use a 1 inch clamp or a 1 inch pinch clamp. So, which is really good because 1 inch clamps are very common. So just go to Amazon or eBay and just check out 1 inch clamps, and you can clamp them to the bracket. So your Visa mount or whatever you're using, you can put that clamp directly onto the Visa mount by however you want. So, but 1 inch clamps come in every shape and size. You'll find one that suits.
Rupert and Ken.
Yeah, you can also get a various excuse me, just 1 second. Various brackets, Visa mount brackets to accommodate things like small form factor PCs or even Raspberry Pis back there. So it just gives you a nice little shelf maybe to put something on. Also, I sometimes use these. It's a Visa offset plate. So it allows you to mount the TV in its normal position, but then it gives you this extra surface here where you can mount things to. It's got mounting holes. On the back of some TVs, if they've got a lot of venting and you can afford just a little bit of space, I've sometimes been able to like fish cable ties through the vents and then just attach small light items in the back in that way. But just be careful if it's a hinge mount that you're going to leave enough space there when you fold the TV back that nothing's going to get caught or trapped. Just stay away from sticking stuff and Velcro. That all fall down. It's going to be at height. If it's a device with any status lights on it, try and put it in a position where you can see the lights from a distance looking up just to see if everything's healthy, and just leave some service loops on your device in case you have to get back there and swap it out.
All right, Ken, then JJ, then back to Leo.
Yeah, I use the it's the Woo 2, which I know Alex talked about once as a clamp. That's what I'm using to connect it to hold it onto my Blackmagic camera. But I think the 1 inch mount that Carl talked about is a better solution. I mean, this one does work fine, but I don't move the camera much, so it's not an issue. But I suppose if it's on the back of a TV, which isn't going to be moving, then that would work. But I think the 1 inch mount that Carl mentioned is a more stable solution, I think.
Go ahead, JJ.
Yeah. Plus one on that Woohoo. That thing's actually really great. I use that a lot. But also magnets. I use lots of magnets everywhere. It makes things really easy to attach and detach, as long as it's not someplace where it'll damage the hardware itself. Magnets.
Go ahead, Leo.
I'm just holding on, being the bad version of Carl, really, and just trying to show what it would look like.
The real life version.
The real life version of Carl. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's the device.
I was curious as well as to if Ethernet and NDI was an option. As we use some of the Apple TVs running this $99 Sienna app, and then we can push and we can change. And a lot of the facilities already have existing Ethernet, and then those are easy to mount.
I think it's the delay in the stream. We want to be able to push out the program out and also put out the Zoom multi-room out to it, and the speed, so we can do it over SDI will be much faster, I think, than doing it over Ethernet.
Are you saying NDI is not as fast as SDI? What?
NDI is, but these are what, $60? Yeah. Versus an NDI receiver box, which is $200 and something off the top of my head.
The Apple TV, I think the least expensive one is $179, I believe. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, both will work. All right, next question.
Next one comes from Hajmak Gajar in Cape Town. Detect excitement with Andy's ZoomISO. Explain what this means in production if I have ATEM Extreme ISO.
Stumping people. So I know that the ZoomISO is not just for NDI kickouts. You can do Blackmagic cards. And for those of you that might have a device like a Mac Mini, you can get a Sonnet external box, throw some cards inside of there, and then you can push SDI out. I'm not sure about HDMI, but you might have to get another converter, and that's how you could use it with an Extreme ISO. Beju, then JJ.
So the basic thing for those people who aren't familiar with it is ZoomISO is a new product from Luminal. Basically, it allows you to output multiple feeds out of a single Zoom meeting over NDI or Siphon. You can use Siphon basically to convert it using something like Black Siphon or a third-party other adapter out of a SDI PCI card such as the TechLinks. So the big thing with it is that you don't need to have multiple separate PCs to get individual feeds of each speakers. Like in the previous question, we were discussing about recording separate individual outputs, individual speakers. How do you record individual speakers out of a meeting? So something like ZoomISO would help with that you could push each of the speakers, each of the panelists as an independent feed out, either via NDI or SDI or HDMI, depending on what kind of machine you have, and then push it into a recorder like the Zoom Extreme, where you could record each of them as ISOs. There are some limitations in the current build of ZoomISO with the audio embedding and stuff, but that's something they're aware of and they're working on it. But yes, it does remove the need for, you might not need 4 machines to push out 4 separate inputs. You could just have one machine do 4, and you can actually do a lot more with it as well. If you haven't had the chance, read up, see the video that Andy's put up on YouTube. He's done a really nice walkthrough on it, and then reach out to anybody there as well at Luminal, because they're really helpful about that as well.
Yeah, and there was a great session that Zoom Test Kitchen OSC version had with Beju and one of the product managers over there at Liminal. Thanks for explaining that more, and hopefully somebody will put the links in the chat to those YouTube videos and the Facebook post. JJ, then Leo.
Yeah, I think one of the components that likely will be true, given the almost intentional cued crickets when we ask the question, is that Andy's, it seems to have put Wireshark against the Zoom session and verified separating out the audio elements so that one can extract those and thus create or allow greater control over the different sessions, the different streams that exist within the Zoom sessions. So that by extracting those different streams, then manipulating those things much more minutely with the control that would be available through ZoomISO versus what's available now in Zoom.
Man, exciting times. We're finally getting all this stuff that we've been wanting for over a year. Leo.
Yeah, so a big important point just to mention, going back to Hasmuth's question, is that the Zoom, the ATEM Mini Extreme ISO is all about recording all of those ISOs so that you can use them in post-production. It's not really that feature, the ISO feature, you wouldn't use in production. But you would use it post when the ISO feature of Zoom ISO is actually in production. You could also record it as well, so it could be used in post, but it has a huge advantage in actual production as well, which the ISO feature of the ATEM doesn't.
Awesome. All righty. Great question, Hasmukh. Next one, TJ.
Next one comes up from Vincent Alvarez in Bellingham. Have a Sonos Arc Soundbar and a pair of Sonos SLs for back speakers, but now thinking of pulling the trigger on the Sonos Subwoofer. At $700, is it worth it? A 14 by 20 foot family room. Will it take sub duty away from the soundbar?
Go ahead, Carl.
So yeah, I looked into this system myself. I own a Sony version of this. So it was designed as a complete system. So if you have the bar and the 2 surround speakers, the system was designed as a 4-piece unit with the subwoofer. So the audio engineers who designed it and implemented Atmos into it, because it has Atmos, it's pretty cool. But yeah, so it was meant to be a 4-piece unit. So if you've only got 3, then it is a good unit for Atmos. So if you're okay with this unit, if you kind of like the sound already, then adding the subwoofer would be good. Especially if you want to resell it. Reselling it as a complete unit makes it a lot easier as well.
Tim, then Craig, then TJ.
Yeah, I have that system and got it with the subwoofer. The first thing you do is go to the Apple TV and download some of the Dolby Atmos test things, and you'll never go back. It's just amazing, seriously, so amazing sounding.
Yeah, and remember for the rest of the family, there is that night mode, so you don't rattle the walls while they're sleeping. I have the same stuff. Craig?
Yeah, I was just gonna say I don't have that system. I've got actually CareK studio monitors with a sub, And I got to tell you, when I don't have the sub in, it's really, really noticeable. The extra dimension you get out of any program really is definitely worth it. Whether that particular system is worth it, I can't speak, but definitely throwing a sub in is just changes everything.
Yeah, go ahead, TJ.
I concur. Once you add a for real subwoofer into your system, you will never go back.
I totally agree. Go ahead with the next question, please, TJ.
All right, coming in from Jason Sipe in Marietta, California. NDI 5.0 is now available with Newtek's latest Tricaster update, 062121. During the install, I had multiple failures stating, your files are corrupt, please download again. Anyone else having these issues?
Wow, Jason should step right up and raise his hand and tell us more. Wow. I wonder if he's totally dead in the water, or if somebody else on the TriCaster forums can lend a hand and get past this, because that's wild. It doesn't look like anybody else has any info on NDI 5. Oh, Jeffrey, go for it.
Well, I know that when you're compiling software, you run into problems. In fact, there was a beta of Wirecast just last week that they put up, and it didn't work on other machines, and they had to take it down and put it back up again. So just let the people at Newtek know, and they'll most likely have a new render up by the end of the day.
Go ahead, TJ.
And I'm not sure the update mechanism, but if there is a mechanism to allow you to download the files that you need to update separately from sort of downloading as the update is running, maybe give that a try.
All righty, let's go for the next question.
Next one from Hasmukh, who is a prolific questioner today. SuperSource, explain relationship between boxes and sources. Example, SS1, SuperSource 1, box 1 source is HDMI 1 into ATEM. A different layout, SuperSource 2 also has box 1. Changing SuperSource 2 box 1 to a different source will also change box 1 source in SS1. Now I'm confused.
Anybody else with ATEM running super sources? Rosco, go for it.
Well, I was going to say super sources are basically cascading DVEs. So, it's just kind of like keying, if you think in that term. If you do something upstream that's going to affect things downstream, then that will show up in other areas. So you just have to kind of think through what is the DVE order and how will something I change here will, in some instances, go on down the road. Sometimes it won't. It's a logic kind of question.
All righty, next question.
Comes from JJ McKenna from Santa Venetia, California. Has anyone used the VDI, Virtual Desktop Infrastructure version of Zoom with any success? Could this be used as a Zoom Room replacement?
Go ahead, Rupert.
So I haven't used it specifically, but I have looked into it. It's important to remember that I think the VDI version of Zoom is specifically for some particular architectures. VDI can sometimes be confused with just a remote desktop session or something like that. But the VDI version of Zoom is for, I think, VMware and Citrix, and I believe it combines a part of the app that will sit in your VDI and then a local client to help you with your audio. But that's about as much as I know about it.
All righty, next question, TJ.
Comes from Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas. Zoom is celebrating 10 years of Zoom. Does anyone have any experience or stories of Zoom in their early days?
Go ahead, Rosco.
Well, we might have some in the next hour because we do have John Idelson hopefully coming in, but I don't know that anyone else is around from that early.
Yeah, what a wild ride that company's been through. I mean, think about it. At the height of the pandemic, I mean, there was 300 million meetings per day, and this is why they had to drop down from HD. There was HD before the pandemic, and they had to throttle it. And hopefully, we'll see it come back to everybody because it is gorgeous. I mean, it's what we're seeing now, but most of the other people see it in 360p. So hopefully, they'll be cracking it back open soon. But I'd imagine they've had a lot of fun over the years. I saw some pictures in the blog post that they put up of their early days of the CEO serving coffee to Zoom Academy attendees as they were walking up. Go ahead, Chad.
I remember back in Hangouts days when everybody was using Hangouts for everything. A friend, Mike Downs, and I were hanging out in Zoom, and we complained that there was a bug, in our mind, a bug. And I swear within 5 minutes, Nick Chong came into our Zoom to talk about it. I'm sorry, Nick Chong is head of global support and services. They took and take customer service so seriously. It really stands out when you care what people are saying to the extent that you're jumping in with them, having the conversation live. And you know he had more important clients to worry about than me and a friend. So I was really impressed by that.
Yeah, I love in their company motto that they talk about a frictionless experience. And I think that's why they're winning right now, as they are keeping the customer in mind and just trying to make it as smooth and seamless as possible. And I think that's why a lot of teachers gravitated towards it early on, because it did just fire right up. And even, kids, my kid, the third grader, was using it all year. So amazing piece of software. And let's go for the next question.
Also from Rupert McRae from Dallas. For anyone using voice over IP for phone service, who are your favorite providers for SIP service?
JJ, cue the crickets. So you're raising your hand?
Actually, yeah. So the back end for Zoom was Ring Central back when they first started connecting, and Ring Central's SIP termination was rather facile. I think Zoom, for a short while, Zoom and Ring Central were fighting for that. But what I will say, though, as far as inside a large corporate infrastructure, the 8x8 integration with the Bonjour, I've had installations where one of the things that you run into a large corporate infrastructure is wireless connectivity, and people will wander around with devices. They'll disconnect and reconnect. An 8x8 introduction into a large corporate environment, their control of Bonjour with mobile devices actually allows that handoff to occur really quickly. So I'd say for different reasons, 8x8 would be my plus one for using VoIP in a large corporate environment, and then SIP termination with 8x8 also is really easy to do.
Go ahead, TJ.
For those of us who don't speak acronym, can you explain what the SIP or SIP is?
Yeah, go ahead, Rupert.
SIP is a session initiation protocol. It's the way a VoIP call gets set up. So it's the preamble where the caller and the callee and their systems negotiate a media path and the ringing and all the signaling that goes along with a VoIP call. And in fact, SIP is used for all kinds of other things as well. In fact, probably even I believe WebRTC uses a SIP layer at the bottom to do the negotiation. A lot of protocols use SIP for different things.
Back to Rosco.
Well, for the radio people, think of SIP as a trunk line or a trunk feed. It's the massive where things get fed off from.
And Rupert.
I disagree with that because it doesn't carry the media. The SIP is just the signaling. The media goes over a real-time media path and the audio gets sent separately. The SIP is just the signaling.
All righty, next question.
Comes from Ed Rubin in Oakland, California. For individual feeds from Zoom, I am using Dell laptops. I need to add more feeds. Should I continue with Dells or change to Mac Minis or MacBooks?
Jeffrey and then Rupert. Jeffrey, you're muted.
I just realized that I've got too many buttons I'm pushing here. If you are, just keep this in mind, if you are, both of them will work well, but if you end up putting a lot of stuff, especially with the M1, you can do more than one Zoom on there. You're putting all your eggs into one basket. So for now, I'm going to stay with separate machines. And yeah, I like depending on how you bring in, I'm more of a fan of Windows Zoom than I am of Mac Zoom right now, especially for things like this.
Go ahead, Rupert.
So I'm kind of heavily biased. I'm a Windows guy, I'm a PC guy, and I'm a Dell guy too. Or a Dell fan. I've always dealt with Dell equipment. Dell laptops are good because they're widely available in the off-lease market, pretty good specs. And if you're going to have a large number of machines, all these pinning machines, then you can use a set of tools that, well, there are lots of sets of tools that one might use in a corporate environment to manage a network like that. I've got 10 machines here, but there's certain things I can do to maintain them, run maintenance tasks all at once, just like it were a office type situation, which cuts down on your, your man hours you need to put into maintaining all these things. Also, remember, if you're on laptops, you've got that battery, which will just, puts less load on your UPS if you've got to keep your production going during a power outage. Just gives you a little bit more buffer there to work with.
Yeah, go ahead, JJ.
This is where I think that VDI version of Zoom might actually be handy. Again, speaking to terminal services, you've got a terminal server with multiple instances on it, or Citrix, as it were. One, I believe, again, not having used VDI very much, one could spin up multiple instances multiple instances of Zoom using VDI, and then pull in multiple feeds in the same fashion. But again, that's theoretical. I don't know.
John Pewitt.
I think this is a good example of go with what you're most comfortable with. If you're used to using Windows, stick with Windows, stick with the Dell laptops. If you want to explore going with Macs, go with Macs. While Windows do have excellent managing capabilities in an enterprise, Macs also have them as well. So don't let that hold you back. I think whatever you're used to, whatever you're comfortable with, go with that, because that's going to simplify your production workflow.
Yeah, and of course, I just got to add in there, do it in the cloud, just like rent somebody else's machine. You can also run Zoom rooms, and you can do more than just one out. So if you want to get 3 out and pay the $49, you can use a Zoom room and pull 3. So that might be helpful, and those run on both Mac and PC. So at that point, it just depends on what your preference is. And I agree with the other guys as to maintenance and being able to upgrade and things like that. Next question.
Next comes from Graham Cardwell from Belfast, Northern Ireland. Looking for some grip gear, brackets, etc., to add an action cam and a separate shoe-mounted shotgun mic alongside a camcorder on a fluid head, the Manfrotto 501 HDV, for recording field sports. Any recommendations?
You're wondering if Carl's going to pull a slide. Will he pull a slide? Go, Carl.
So I'm going to show 2 catalogs, because you're asking for a microphone grip and you're asking for like a action cam grip. These 2 catalogs, which is a lighting catalog, the second half of the lighting catalog is every available arm you could imagine to come off anything to go to anything, and then the video catalog will be more for it actually will have the microphone mounts in the video catalog, which is the one on the right. So just go to Manfrotto catalog, just Google that, and just these 2 catalogs are the ones that are going to have every accessory you've ever thought of. Some of them may attach directly to your 501 as well. 501 has sometimes a 3/8 screw that some of these attachments can go to.
Alrighty, next question.
Next comes from Samuel Nordvik from Norway. I have a Panasonic camcorder that only outputs 1080p 50 via HDMI and scaled down to 1080p 25 in my capture card and input into vMix. Is it possible to scale this signal to 1080p 30 in a capture card for true 30p streaming to YouTube?
Carl, then Rupert.
So unfortunately, because you live in a 50 hertz PAL country like I do, I have a Sony camcorder that's the same. They don't sell camcorders in our countries that do both, unless you get a pro camcorder. So the consumer and prosumer camcorders are either 25 or they're 30 in North America or Asia. So no, I wouldn't suggest turning 25 into 30. It would look pretty bad. Stick with the 25. Let Zoom do its work. So don't you change it. Let Zoom do it. If it's going to do it. The other option is to get yourself a cheap mirrorless camera, a second-hand mirrorless camera. All the mirrorless cameras you can change between NTSC and PAL. Just set it to NTSC and you'll be 30 frames a second. But unfortunately, camcorders sold in 50 hertz countries like Norway and Australia, they're just locked to 25, maybe 24 with the Panasonics, which is kind of good, but they're 24 or 25. There's no 30 in those camcorders, unfortunately.
Go ahead, Rupert.
They're not my area specifically, but would a decimator not do this?
It would, but you might have
cheaper
some
to buy a new
artifacting.
camcorder.
Yeah, cheaper. Yeah, $295 if you have one laying around. That would work. Alrighty, next question.
Next comes from Douglas Carmichael. Have any of you been involved in amateur radio operations, and have those skills benefited you in your career?
Go for it, Rupert, and then JJ and Ken.
Yeah, so I'm a licensed radio operator, and it's been useful in all kinds of ways. The learning process was really useful for like understanding frequency spectrum, harmonics, and bandwidth, and all kinds of things like that, which was really useful for understanding Wi-Fi, troubleshooting Wi-Fi at an RF level, understanding where those new standards are going and how those channels are really being sliced up. It gives you some insight into that skill set. Also, from a communications point of view, the general kind of etiquette and protocol of how one talks back and forth on radio is helpful in the comms type world, whether it's on radio or any other comm system. Just radio operators kind of know how to do that stuff anyway. And also the ham radio community are pretty well plugged into like the emergency planning community. So that can be quite useful for just a general awareness of that kind of thing when you're running events and things or whatever. You just get a extra set of skills that understand the things that are needed in an emergency.
Yeah, I know that our friend Paul Valhus has some experience in this. Hopefully he'll raise his hand after JJ and Ken.
So my work wasn't amateur; it was professional. It was in managing a WISP here in California, in the Bay Area, and I'd have to say that working with license links, that frequency coordination with the FCC, that kind of coordination, just in frequency world, like understanding how light works, how all frequencies work, and function both in harmonics and coordinating with other agencies. Having that understanding of how to coordinate, I think in general, allows one, both in the public sector and the private, to extend those same skill sets beyond whatever you're working with, because frequencies are frequencies no matter what you're working with. So that's what I'd say.
All right, go ahead, Ken.
Exactly. It doesn't much matter who's using the frequency. The coordination requirements are still the same. And I think sometimes the love of technology for its own sake takes people into amateur radio, but sometimes it works the other way around. People have a particular desire to communicate. Physicians in Deepest Darkest, for example, and Rupert's back in queue again, find that amateur radio is one of the few ways that allows them to communicate at all. Secondly, most of the technological advances that have happened up to perhaps the micro assembly stage that we're in now happened first in amateur radio because those guys could afford to fail. It wasn't a commercial enterprise in the first place. Sometimes we had to open the windows to let the smoke out, but we learned a lot in the process.
Alrighty, thank you for that. Well, William Hillary, then Rupert.
The amateur radio that I studied when I was a teenager, I didn't expect to be using in my education career until the pandemic hit. So
go ahead, Rupert. And then, yay, Paul's raising his hand. So we'll get to hear from Paul here in a second.
So just one thing I'd like to add is the amateur radio community is so like collaborative and supportive of, sharing knowledge and bringing in new people. And, they have clubs and they're just really, it's a group of people who really want to bring everybody in and bring them up together. And that was kind of refreshing for me when I got involved in it. And actually that's a lot like how this community feels. So it's during office hours and things like that. So it's that's kind of been helpful too, because it's been nice to see another group of people doing that.
Go for it, Paul.
Yeah, I can testify to the collaborative nature of ham radio. I just was talking to someone on the air and I said, man, it'd be cool to have a repeater with Fusion and DMR and all this stuff. And he said, well, I'll build it for you. You just buy the parts and I'll build it. And so Tom, K5TRA, he built this 3-level rack that's unbelievable. It's impeccably built. Every little bolt and nut is perfect. And I just installed it. And over the next few days, I'm gonna get it up and running out here in Cedar Creek. But it's amazing how hams help each other, collaborate with each other. And there's a lot of exciting new digital modes like Fusion, like DMR, new radios, new gear. And it's just a lot of innovations come out of ham radio, just like they come out of NASA. you know, and I think we'll be seeing some of the current technology that we're using come into play in the audio and video, more audio than video profession that we're talk about every day.
Awesome. Rosco.
On a practical side, it teaches you how much difference a properly tuned antenna makes. And until you've actually had the experience of tuning an antenna and seeing how much difference that makes, you think, oh, any piece of metal will work. No,
Exactly.
not the case.
Interesting. You want to go back on that, Paul, at all? Do you know much about throwing that transmission super far, fine tuning it?
Yeah, I've got antennas. I've got several of them up on the third story of this house, and I'm gonna have to drag out my SWR meter and check them all out and make sure they're all tuned. It's really important. I won't argue with that.
You don't have a camera feed that you can cut to so we can see your antennas? Come on, we need.
I wish
see
I
this
did.
stuff.
I'll get it. I'll get it going, Guy. Ask me again in a week, okay?
Okay, will do. Rupert.
Yeah, just one final point. I've got a device back there that you can attach to an antenna, and it'll tell you what frequency that antenna is tuned for.
Oh wow, very cool. Alrighty, Craig Kadoke, or sorry, next question, TJ.
That does come from Craig Kadoke from Toronto. And Craig, if I'm mispronouncing your name, let me know, please. How can I get audio monitor control of a Blackmagic 4ME broadcast studio with a 2ME advanced panel? Right now, the audio button on the panel does nothing.
Nothing? Carl, go for it.
Don't worry, Blackmagic has your back. So they've got the Fairlight desktop console. So this is the audio companion to your 2ME switcher, well, the control panel anyway. So yeah, this will plug directly in. So this is a new feature. This is a new product from Blackmagic. They've got the big desk, of course, but this one is a more entry-level price, fully featured. So, and it talks to all the ATEMs from, I think, the 2ME up to the Constellation very nicely.
Over to you, Craig.
Yeah, no, I've seen that. I just literally just want to do audio monitor, like local speaker out trim through the panel. And right now, like I said, the audio button on the panel, it's like it's not even connected to anything. Doesn't give you anything on the screen. Doesn't show you any functionality. Is that just that's not built into that panel? It's for it's only for one of the other ATEM units.
So as far as I'm aware, the audio control that's on there could be for the Constellation, but yeah, so because for the the 2ME control panel, but they're either the Fairlight stuff is either full software or they've got their control panels now. So that's
we can do it through the ATEM software on the computer on that network. It's just, you know, with that surface there, it'd be nice just to be able to grab the knob and say, yeah, we want to hear what's coming in a little bit louder or not. So, okay. So probably just for the Constellation. Thanks.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, that Fairlight looks so cool. Thanks a lot, Carl. Now there's something that's $3,500 that I really want to buy. And Dad,
Jesse's
if you're
dad
listening, my birthday in November could be a good time.
That's awesome. All right, now we know what to get them. Go ahead with the next question, TJ.
From George Kennedy Jr. in Washington, D.C. Anyone on the panel heading to NAB in October?
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, there's a group of us that are coming in, and we are going to be doing something office hours related. We haven't figured that out, what we're going to do just yet. I'm going to try and make it myself. I do have a couple of their events that month that kind of got to figure out my budgets for that. But if you want to be part of the group or just kind of figure out when can all meet together and say hi in real life, there is a Discord called NAB Show. It's towards the bottom of Discord. You can definitely get on there and say when you're going to come in, when you're going to head out, so we can organize everything.
And party at Preto's house, right? Jesse Schwartz, go ahead.
Yeah, so John Preto lives there. He's got a few people coming and staying at his house. I'm going to be there staying at the Westin. And there are at least 6 people that I know of right now that are coming. So the more the merrier.
So I wonder what the numbers have in the past. I think it's around 130,000, if I remember correctly. What's people's guesses as to attendance this October compared to the normal 130,000? John, guessing?
I would say 6/10 that.
6/10. Okay, we'll remember that. We're recording this. All right, it's on YouTube. Come back to that. Rupert, go ahead.
So I'm not going, but I imagine for anybody that are, it'll be nice to meet up with people and stuff like that. But there may also be vendors that you might look forward to being able to see. I just wanted to get a feel for who knows which vendors are definitely not going. I think we heard the other day that sound devices aren't going to be there. Has anybody heard of any other stories of big names decided not to go?
So we usually have a booth. I'm the U.S. distributor for Reflect Media, and we usually have a booth, and we will not be in attendance this year after 12, 13 years in a row. So this will be the first one, mainly because the folks come from the UK, and it's a lot of planning. And now with everything going on, it's a heavy lift for them to come on over. Rosco.
Yeah, there used to be, while all the booths were being set up on the convention floor, then the Broadcast Education Association, which is colleges that have TV programs, would meet in all the meeting rooms because NAB gave them to us for a very good price. They are not meeting this year. So, I mean, there's a few ancillary groups like that were attached to NAB that just, it happens to fall during the school year, so that doesn't work.
Yeah, hopefully some of us can roam the floor or pull some people into a hotel room suite and we can broadcast from there. I'd love to see it tossed. I mean, I've watched Loria Petrucci of Live Streaming Pros with David Foster cover not only NAB but CES, and they had a master control where they would toss it back to master control, and then they can boogie to another booth while one was wrapping, and then use comms to say, hey, we're going over to here, because it is a hike to get to the next booth a lot of the time. So you need kind of a way to collapse that time so that it's seamless to the viewers. But we'll see how we can do this. I mean, it should be fun. Jeffrey.
Yeah, my friend Don a few years ago worked with LiveView, and they actually had a booth, but they had the master control back in his studio in Arizona. So his son was actually doing all the mixing that would then go out to people. Something we could definitely do that way. We don't even need a booth. We just need a station, whether it be inside the convention center or in a suite, and be able to do a lot of transfer. There's a time delay, but people don't really care about that. No one knows it.
Yeah, they were sponsored by LiveView, so they actually had the LU500, so they had the bigger ones. And I know that there's an even more efficient one out now, but they had the 5 modem version, which maybe that's something we can get a heads up on. And, hey, LiveView, loan us 5 backpacks, and then we can just, cover a lot of ground with 5 backpacks, especially if we have somebody in master control, queuing us, hey, get that next booth ready, and you're going to go live in 5. Rupert.
I'd also be interested to see, of all the channels out there that are going to cover it, online through streaming, whatever. I'd be interested to see over the next few months how many subscribers those channels pick up.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. The world's changing. It's exciting. Hopefully George is going there as well. And let's go ahead and take the next question.
Coming up from Fred Eric Eckart in Bad Herrenalb, Germany. How much latency is added when using the Blackmagic Micro 3G converters on both ends and a Blackmagic Smart Video Hub in between?
Carl, right at you.
So the thing with the SDI, let's say this is an SDI to HDMI, the micro converter. So there are 2 steps where there can be introduced latency. So it's going to be the first step will definitely be you're going to see latency when it's coming in, and it's going to deserialize it. So it's actually going to take a frame rather than part of a frame. And then the next part that's going to definitely have latency is going to be if you're doing any custom video processing on it. So you're looking at 1 to 2 frames generally. As far as the smart video hubs, with the exception of the clean scan smart video hub, they won't have any latency, measurable latency that you can notice, because they're literally just a bent pipe. The clean vid one does, because it's resyncing the inputs, so they can be switched.
All righty. Next question.
Next, coming from Leo Mendel from Pinner UK, and here on the panel. I have a Canon camera with a bust HDMI port. I know the part number, but I can't find a source in the UK. Any suggestions?
Go ahead, TJ.
So I tried to get the part from a local contact I had here, and the camera shop I talked to did not do repairs in-house. So my best suggestion would be if you can find a repair shop or camera shop that does repairs in-house that may have access to be able to actually order that part from Canon directly.
Jeffrey Powers?
You could also try to take older cameras, go to the shops and see if they have any for parts type cameras and do it that way. It's a bigger risk to do, but then you'll have extra parts just in case something else breaks down.
Alrighty, next question looks like it's a question that might have an answer right below it. So if you can tie those two together.
Yep, I will do so. So coming from Hajmuk, Gajar in Cape Town, back to the super sources. He's not giving up. Three super source preset with box 1, 2, and 3. Box 1 is camera 1. Another preset super source with 2 boxes, box 1 and 2. If I change box 1 to camera 2 in the 2-box super source, the box 1 in the 3-box super source also changes to HDMI 2. And we have an answer for that posted by Atem Tao from the MixEffect Pro
developer.
Yes, who says you need to enable the use box sources feature of both presets if you want to lock the sources in your presets. By default, the presets choose whatever box source is currently selected.
There you go. Very cool to have the developer right here in Mukana to answer that question. Thank you, Atem Tao. Next one.
Next, coming from Douglas Carmichael, would a second hour on amateur radio be within office hours scope? I'd love to see it.
Rupert, John, and Ken.
So maybe like amateur radio might be a little out of scope, but general like RF might be a better subject.
Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, the answer is no. The hobby is too broad. You can't do that in 1 hour. You can spend your entire lifetime in only a small part of the hobby. But it might be interested to take a slice of that and talk about things like how to explain technology to the masses or how to do a particular task well. And we have some experience in how to fail at that. So success is just, guaranteed. It's just a little beyond the reach right now.
All right, it looks like we're super low on questions, so producers get to work. We got 15 minutes left before the educators come. So if you got something on your mind, something if you look in Mukana and your crazy questions that you've kind of shelved to the side and been thinking about, toss them in there now. Let's see, there was John Preto, then Rosco, then William Hill.
So real quick, the post-show breakout rooms have done a wonderful job of kind of percolating up, subject matters and saying, here's the scope. I think sometimes here right now, the scope, like Ken just said, is huge. So where do you start? But if you go into a post-show and you say, hey, what we really would like to explain to people is this, this, and this, then I think sometimes that can work into a nice second hour.
John, did you want to add on to that at all? Or was it just a straight thumbs down?
Thumbs down.
All right, Jeffrey Powers.
Here's an idea, and that is because Alex really does want to turn this into more of a multi-hour cycle, maybe even an all-day type thing. But get into the pre-show, see if there's other people that want to talk about amateur radio, or find some other people, get your own Zoom room together, and start creating content. And then when this does happen, where we have a multi-hour situation, you can come to Alex and just say, hey, we got the show. We just want to port it right in, make it happen, and then you've got a system right there. So, if you're willing to take the reins on that, amateur hour could be more than a second hour. It could actually be its own scheduled time during the week.
Yeah, go ahead, Rupert.
Also, check out Ham Nation. It used to be on Twit, but they've moved onto a different network now. But that show has been going for a long time. You'll learn a lot from about ham radio on there.
Yeah, and as far as second hours go, I mean, I love the fact that in the Discord, the more votes that everybody, or emojis or faces, whatever you guys put in there to vote it up, it gets done. Like if you go back through those ideas, they have come to fruition. So Alex is definitely paying attention as to what second hour ideas are best voted on. Next question.
Next up from Douglas Carmichael, what has your experience been running audio applications like DAWs, digital audio workstations, on Windows? I've heard that ASIO applications take over the whole audio interface and you can't mix content from multiple applications.
Cue the crickets. Is that? There they go, Craig.
I don't generally use Windows. I'm one of those guys, but I do know that there are some problems with, one of the things that the Mac has with the aggregate audio devices is a really nice sort of plus on the Mac side. Sorry, the other thing that I've found is that I've just had a really, really bad week with Pro Tools. So I'm just sorry, I'm going off topic. The driver situation is a bit of an issue for me. The other problem with stuff like Pro Tools specifically is that it grabs. I don't know if this is a Windows only or if this is a Windows and Mac in Pro Tools, but it grabs every drive that's connected and won't release it till you shut down the program. So that's just another thing with that.
Yeah, Douglas, that might be one also to save for or rephrase for Tuesday when we have a bunch of the audio experts, especially when Tucker is on. I know that he's big into mixing on his L1 Waves device. So let's go ahead and take the next one from Craig.
Craig says, Shure's wireless workbench might make a nice second hour, ?
I agree. That is awesome. For those of you who haven't seen it, it's amazing, especially to scan open areas. And then you could import your local TV and HD and radio stations. If they're on those spectrums, you can see the spikes of where to watch out for. So it scans in real time. So if you're in a basement building with concrete, it'll give you the feed of what's there. And then more importantly, there's other device antennas that you can use to only pick up certain spectrum. So that wireless workbench is super helpful. I say you put that one in the Discord as a second hour idea. Go ahead, Craig, if you want to add on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I've already thrown that in there. The other nice thing about it, other manufacturers have similar stuff. Sennheiser, of course, has their own. The nice thing about it is that it also goes through, it uses one of the receivers for your mic system as the scanning device. So you're getting it through that whole signal chain, which is an important function of it.
Yeah, it's amazing software, and you can download it for free and check it out and play around with it. You can import those local stations and things. If you don't have the hardware, you won't be able to do much, but it is still cool because you can go in there and you can pretend like you have some stuff like Electrosonics and you can add it in there, and it's really neat. Next question.
Comes from Michael J. in New York City. Hi, Guy and all. I have a Mac Mini 2018 using OWC's Thunderbolt 3 dock. Who would think, perhaps Office Hours team would, I need more Thunderbolt slots. Your recommendations, please. Thank you.
Rosco Jones and then Carl.
Well, stay within the manufacturer. OWC does make Thunderbolt ports, or Thunderbolt hubs now. So I would stay with that manufacturer if you need more ports.
Yeah, go ahead, Carl, and then Jeffrey.
So Thunderbolt is an end of chain, so it must be daisy chained. You can't. It's not like USB where you can turn 1 into 4. Thunderbolt can go out to, I think, 6 total devices, and the last one can be a display. So you can't actually fork Thunderbolt display. So, for instance, if you've got the 2018 Mac Mini, that'll have 4 Thunderbolt ports in the back. It means you have 2 Thunderbolt controllers inside. The Thunderbolt controller is actually what the Thunderbolt is, which means each Thunderbolt controller is sharing 2 ports already, which means between 2 of them, you're going to get maximum 40 gigabit bandwidth. And then Thunderbolts, depending on the external devices, are daisy chained. They're not forked. So they have to be daisy chained. So a lot of audio interfaces will have 2 Thunderbolts on the back of them. You go, why has it got 2? Because you go 1 in, 1 out. So you can daisy chain them along. So it's a daisy chain process, not a forking process like USB.
Yeah, Jeffrey Powers.
Yeah, the exactly what Carl just said. The MacBook Pros had 2 buses in them, so that's why you had 4 ports, but still 6 devices in it. And of course, if you have a device like a 4K monitor over a 1080p monitor, that's going to take up more of everything for that port. And so the best thing to do is to just start separating out machines if you need more Thunderbolt ports and figure out how these computers can work in tandem.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. And next question.
From Grant Cardwell in Belfast, Northern Ireland. Going back to my rugby coverage, I have a Sennheiser EW300 inner monitor as receiver to feed into my camcorder. Can I improve on the onboard antenna, example paddles? Don't forget it's outside with no mains power.
And by the antenna yeah, I do recall that there's a SM mod that you can do if it's what I'm thinking. You can take that, you can unscrew it, you can get the SMA mod antenna, and you can put that in there, and it'll give you better reach. And that's also a mod that can be done on the EW100 series. So Google that Sennheiser SMA mod and see if that might be what you're looking for. Any other ideas on that one? Looks like next question then.
From Tim Holm in San Lorenzo, what are the hardware trends and rumors that are popping up in the news regarding live streaming and media production? What can we be excited about during the next 6 months? Guy?
I think there's a lot to be excited about, especially with the H.265 stuff. Because, you know, a lot of the times we're not able to get out of a certain area. And so if we can use more efficient codecs, I mean, that's a game changer. And especially things like cloud and being able to get stuff up to a specific spot. And so I think we're going to see just more remote cameras and people taking control of them, more remote graphics. So I think it's remote. StreamYard is something we've seen investors put a lot of money into. So I think we're going to see a lot in that regard too. Leo, you want to grab onto this one a little bit?
So the only thing I'm seeing a lot of is I think the move that we've seen with StreamYard and with other areas like this, I think we're going to see more and more. The big area that I think is everything is moving to production in the cloud. So it's bringing in the endpoints into the cloud. And that's going to make a big difference. It's going to be changing this whole workforce that we're seeing of the ability to bring things out over dedicated links. So when I started in production, we would bring everything via satellite links, dedicated satellite links back to places like BT Tower in London and bring it out. It's super, super expensive, but you were getting high quality video that way. Now you're getting the same stuff, the internet, the speed of the internet connections at every single location is fast enough or is getting to be that speed. And I think that's where you're going to see it. You'll see diversity in the quality of what you see out. You won't necessarily see a big change. It'll just be that they'll be bringing people far quicker in remote locations.
Yeah, go ahead, Rupert.
Yeah, I can't find the exact details now, but I did read an article a couple of days ago that Starlink are going to reach some kind of milestone later this year in terms of their coverage. You know, they're in kind of beta phase right now and it's kind of patchy, but obviously they're working on that. And sometime here soon, they say they're going to reach a particular milestone in terms of coverage and performance.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we see higher resolutions too. I think that we'll wind up seeing, 4K resolutions coming. This is a hardware box. It's a 995 box. ProInk makes this one. It's a 4K 30p H.265 encoder with NDI and SRT in one. So it does 3 encodes at one time. So stuff like this is just going to get better and cheaper. And as the stuff comes out, more people will get more ideas. More people come in, buy it, it gets cheaper. So I think the need is just going to drive the market. We're going to just see people saying, hey, now I need this and now I need that. We're going to see more simple AWS solutions where people are figuring it out how to make it simple. TVU Networks is a good example. You guys can go in there and play. Sony also has a cloud download 5 hours that you can play with. And you get the idea when you send up an SRT feed from Larix. Larix is a free app that you can test that out too. Go ahead, Leo.
So you mentioned there about NDI and SRT. So the thoughts of NDI 5 being able to unlock the ability to literally dump a camera down and then be able to pick it up and remote control that camera from anywhere via the NDI link rather than SRT could be quite interesting because you could just see this opening up the ability to change. At the moment, a big production will have multiple cameras in a location and they're all controlled locally. And if you could literally break that out so that they can bring everything back into a super powerful machine. I mean, the stuff we tried with vMix, I know you've done similar, Guy. For a 1 hour hire of the machine that you hire in AWS, it's like 6 times more powerful than you can put on anywhere. But you only need it for that hour.
All righty, now we're going to start speeding things up. And so next question.
From Zach Schwartz in West Palm Beach. Regarding custom white balance, when camera position is too far away to zoom into the white or gray card, is the standard solution to just move the camera within range to adjust white balance and then return it to the far away position for the shoot?
Rosco, then Carl.
Move the camera to the card. Do not move the card to the camera.
Carl.
And make sure that your card fills the entire frame.
Next question.
From Rupert McRae in Dallas. In the old days, we used to use analog RF modulators to transmit video signals to TVs across existing coax installations as a TV channel. As anyone does this in the digital era?
Go ahead, Carl.
There are digital transmitters. In certain countries, you do need permits to go beyond like 10 meters or 30 feet. AirPlay.
All right, next question.
From James Babbitt in San Diego. What lens would you recommend for the Blackmagic 6K, maybe the wide-angle Canon 16-35L lens?
John Pruitt, then Carl.
I'm using the 24-70 with my 6K Pro, and it works really good. It gives me a little bit more flexibility than 16-35. You'd have to be really close, and you get a little bit more bokeh, I think, that way.
Go ahead, Carl, and then Mark Giuliani.
I own both the 16-35 and the 24-70. If your camera's going to be on a tripod and you're doing these kind of Zoom calls, 24-70 is a good one because you get nice and tight. You can clean up your background. If you intend to take that camera outside ever, then the 16-35 is much better because it gives you wide angle. You can get group shots, you get landscape shots.
Mark Giuliani.
And I have both as well, and this is the 24-70. I found it just works better in this situation.
Yeah, and don't forget also that you can push in using the DV effect. So if you have wider, you can push in digitally versus if you don't have that wideness, you're kind of bummed. So Jesse Schwartz.
I have that lens too, but then I also have one, I believe is 10-17, 10-18. And because I have such a small area, my desk is pretty small. So when I use it for Zoom, I actually really need the super wide. So my super wide was $300. The one that's a 2.8 that's more of a normal zoom was $800. So from a value standpoint, that super wide works pretty well for Zoom calls.
Nice. All right, let's take this next question, TJ.
From Josh Kaufman. I like the new Windows notification capabilities. I can get notifications from my phone, social media, etc. Now, how do I turn off all these notifications when my PC becomes a production machine? Or at least a notification audio.
Love it. Rupert.
So in Windows, you can it gives you pretty good control over the Windows notifications, but that's not going to stop everything because, of course, all these other apps sometimes have some pop-up messages of their own. So going through all of those to reconfigure them can be time-consuming. But really, I wouldn't put a machine like that into production. I'm not going to use a machine that I have all my alerts set up on, my everything, my normal workflow, my normal productivity machine into production. The way I'd set up a machine like that would be totally different with everything shut down to begin with. I'd never cross those two.
Jeffrey Powers.
So yeah, I just actually had this, my stream machine I just redid my stream machine with a new motherboard and everything. And it came up with the Xbox overlay console, which kind of stopped all my streaming stuff. To do that, a lot of it will be in the settings area in Windows. You can also go into the uninstall area and uninstall everything, including the solitaire game, including everything. And then, of course, if you know regedit, the registry editor, you can go to the run area and run once and see what's in there. If it's still popping up, usually you got to go into the software itself and probably find a setting that says do not start at startup and go from there. And then the best part is once you've got that all tied down, you can create a image of that. So if you have to reload from scratch, you have that image.
All right, 10 seconds, Rupert.
Look on GitHub. There's some Windows setup scripts that'll scrape a lot of that stuff out for you. And then also check out Winaro Win Tweaker or something like that. That'll give you options to a whole lot of that stuff.
Next question.
From Vincent Alvarez in Bellingham. By now, you should have received this year's Amazon Prime Day purchases. Any happy, sad stories to share?
John Pruitt, then Rupert. And then Roscoe's holding up something.
I got an Ecobee thermostat control for my house, and it's finally keeping my office at a livable temperature.
Oh, John, did you get the one with the multiple receivers or room? Nice, nice. Very cool.
I ordered
I
two
want
more.
that. Let
I
us
ordered
know
two more to
how
go with it.
I want it. Rupert.
So we haven't seen Jason Bache in a couple of days. I imagine he's really busy keeping everything clean with his new power washer.
That's right. We'll have to get a live stream of that. Pipe over to Jason's. Rosco Jones, what do you got?
All right, I like these. These are Nanami. I lose AirPods all the time. These I don't lose. They battery operate all day. Nanami X1s or whatever they're called, and they were on sale, so I bought more. So I have 4-year supply.
All right, Leo.
So I already had the aftershocks, but I bought some new the uprated versions of the aftershocks, but I haven't put them on my ears yet. I'm waiting to ask Jeffrey. Look at that. You see, it's great when you've got a model that even looks better than you do, who's got them on to show you what they look like. I think they're absolutely great for audio for these sort of events because you don't have to wear these, but they're on all the time.
Jesse?
Just beware that when I talk, the pop-in Ps are going to bother you that much more.
Gotcha. All right, next question.
From Leo Mendel, I'm planning to connect an X32 using a Dante card to a Zoom PC. I know I can send the sound from the room to Zoom. Can I send Zoom back to the room over the Dante card?
Man, Cara, if this was Jeopardy, you'd be cleaning house right now. Go for it.
Yeah, so Dante is two-way. So essentially coming out of your PC using the Dante control software, you can say, I want these channels to go out to the card. And then in your X32, you can reroute those Dante channels in the menu system to go out of the physical outputs on the back of the X32.
Wow, that's awesome. Leo, go ahead. Quick.
So the real question is, how much does it cost to fly Carl from Australia to the UK just to set it all up?
Virtual, man. We can do all this virtually, right? All right, next one from Hasmuk. TJ, can you read that one?
I have Talifo lights, has DMX in and out. How do I control this light and what is a typical DMX setup?
Roscoe, then Carl.
Light boards or software dongles. I mean, those are the two typical setups. So you either buy from ETC or a small board, because you don't need a large one, to do the controlling, and then you do need to do all the wiring, or you can actually get software dongles and use software.
Yeah, so the software option would probably be the best for you, Hasmuk. But you can get I've got a 24 channel board. It's relatively cheap.
Yeah, the one thing that stopped me on this is make sure you get the right cable too, because I quickly found out I'm new to this universe, and there is 5-pin and 3-pin, I believe. So if you get a DMX King, that's the one I got off of Amazon, and then my Nanlite Mix Panel 150 is a different port. So make sure you get the right one. Last question.
Final question for the day from Neil Avaledo from Boca Raton, Florida. How to do Alex whiteboarding using Mimo Live and an iPad?
Ooh, where is Chris? Isn't here today, but I know that it has. We're using it with our one-button studio. I just was playing with the Wacom board. We got the 20-inch in our one-button studio, and it's using Mimo Live. It's some pretty basic looking tools. I wasn't super pumped with how just there's like 5 pen, like normally you get like circles and you get arrows. Well, there was arrows. So it's in there as a layer. So you add the layer and then you're going to have to route your HDMI in and your USB, kind of like what Alex does. But yeah, it's all doable with Mimo Live. All righty, we're going to let the educators in, and Emily should be stepping up to host. We'll give them a little bit of time to do a mic check. And then we'll say adios to those that want to raise their hand on the panel and bring in the new folks.
Goodbye, YouTube viewers.
Thanks, guys.